Welcome to For Real. It's time to communicate and get real about relationships with your host, Liesel, Daisley, and psychologist, Krisnan. So join us for real. Hello and welcome to For Real, where we discuss topics to help you navigate your relationships. I'm your host, Liesel Daisley, and joining me is psychologist and life coach, Krisnan. Welcome, Krisnan.
Thanks, Liesel. So wonderful to be here and good to have you as well.
Yeah, pleasure having you all join us. Today, we're going to discuss a hot topic in relationships, and it's communication. Yes, I said the C word. Communication. So first of all, Krisnan, what is healthy communication?
Right, so when we're talking about healthy communication, we're talking about where persons are, one, expressing themselves, and they're also being understood.
Okay.
And it's being done in a way or in a quality where there is flow, it's like dancing, there's give and there's take. And it allows the interaction, the living together, to be easier.
Okay.
And the whole purpose of communication is to be able to understand each other, to be understood, and to get along, basically.
Yeah. Sounds easy, but communication, as we both know, is hard work.
Yeah, very much so. And one of the greater challenges with communication is, well, two of the greatest challenges, which relates to the two parts of it, is feeling like you're understood, feeling like your partner understands you, and then the ability to say what we want to say.
To be understood.
To be understood.
Yeah, that's hard too. Yeah, that takes a lot of work. These days, there's this new word out there, love language. Now, what does this really mean, love language? Because for all my years growing up, you get into a relationship, there was never any talk about you knowing the person's love language or the person knowing your love language. This seems to be a new thing. What is love language?
Okay, so love language speaks to how I show love. Okay. And also how I like to receive love. So how do I speak love to the other person? Okay. And some people, there is a book on the 5 love languages and speaks about giving, serving, time, being touched, and communicating verbally. And so what is the person's preference? How do they like to show love and how do they like to receive it? Okay. And when it is done in the person's love language, in their preferred way, they feel cared for, they feel like the center of attention, they feel like their needs are being met, basically.
And they respond.
It's like a duck in water. It's like you everything is going your way, everything is happening easier.
Okay. Now, we both know that women and men communicate differently. How difficult or how easy is it for a man to be able to understand a woman's love language? Because women, we kind of expect y'all to just know. So we don't necessarily sit down and say, okay, I like this, I like that. We kind of just expect you all to know. So how can a man know what his wife or his girlfriend's love language is without her necessarily sitting down with him and going through the checklist? Is it a case where he can observe her behavior? Like, how can he know her love language? And I do believe that, yes, there will be some communication that would be necessary. But outside of her verbally communicating it, what else can he do to learn her love language, first of all?
Well, it helps to know what she is like when he is not around, or what brings her alive, what makes her feel comfortable or happy, and what makes her feel easy and what makes her open up.
Okay.
Those things that make her feel alive, that make her feel comfortable, that allow her to be herself. Sometimes, as you mentioned, you say it is expressed, but sometimes you can just observe.
Yeah.
And then the person is always giving hints. People give hints to what about what they want.
Yes.
Things they say, but things that they gravitate to.
Yes.
So a person might decide, okay, let's go out and spend time somewhere, or and this is communicating here, of course, but part of it is
a subtle hint, maybe.
A subtle hint.
Yeah.
Watching a movie, or you've met her and she has lots of jewelry or lots of whatever, something.
Yes.
And that to her is valuable.
Yeah.
Maybe when you go out, when you're dating, you see these things, you see the person come with these things. Not only a person doesn't just wear or express or demonstrate what they want others to like, or what they think will be appealing to others, but they also communicate and they demonstrate what they like.
Okay.
So when you enter their world and you see what they are coming with and what they have a tendency towards, what they gravitate to, then you get a number of hints about what they like and what would make the world easier for them.
Okay. Now we discussed how a man can observe a woman's love language. Now for the other way around, if a man doesn't necessarily communicate all the things that he likes and does not like, how can a woman know what his love language is? Because again, we know that men and women communicate quite differently.
Well, it's important to, this is something that we can look at another time, understand that there are general what we refer to as archetypes.
Okay.
Or universal qualities that the men and women have. So men tend to be visual. Visual. Men tend to like to be active, doing things. And these are very, very generic. Sports and these kind of things. We also we get oftentimes, and it's not all men don't tend to be as quote unquote expressive emotionally, and they don't often tend to be as talkative. Now that is a generalization, so that wouldn't apply to all men. Some men like to talk a lot, some men like to hear, to listen, or turned on or stimulated by things that are said. But these are general things. So you got male and female archetypes, male and female energy, general male and female preferences. Okay. General expressions of masculinity and expressions of femininity. But men generally men generally value being respected. Yes. And ego comes a lot into play. Yes. So men like to know that they are wanted. Women like it too, but they are wanted and they are needed. To give, to provide something. Yes. To perform some kind of function. Yes. Right? And that is important for men. Then there are the final qualities like whether he's a touchy, physical, kinesthetic person, auditory, etc. But men oftentimes, I think, generally, I get the sense, men generally are more straightforward. They tell it what it is. Yes. You would see things on social media or out there that says women are very complicated. They have so many minute little things, and men, they're basic 3 or 4 things that men want.
Yes.
So men tend to be fairly straightforward.
It's true.
So, and you ask them what they want and they tell you for the most part. However, you need to have that conversation, you need to have that discussion to understand what your partner specifically needs and how they like it. Because what also comes into play is that people want to give according to their love language, but the person receiving it isn't perceiving it as enjoyable or as preferred.
Okay.
So the way how it is given, or maybe the thing that is given at all, isn't received in the way that it is meant. So it must be sensitive and observant about how the person responds. Not only in the moment, but maybe they give hints or they tell you straightforward, I don't like this or I don't want this.
Yeah.
And find a way to do it in a way that is more suitable for them.
Yes. And how they respond is key, because you could expect one type of response and feel disappointed when you don't get the reaction that you were expecting. So that's something that you would have to be able to manage.
Oh yeah, most certainly.
Yes.
So what happens is that people tend to feel like how I express myself, everybody, or how I give things, everybody will like it.
Right.
It's hard when you get a response, and communication is about being, generally there's a rule that says communication is about the message being received.
Yes.
So the person sharing the message should adapt it to make sure that it's received by those that they're trying to share it with. And it's useful for both men and women to understand it. How we give the message is important, but also and therefore the response you get. Now, if you're getting a response that isn't favorable or we don't like, then you kind of have to cushion yourself, you kind of have to brace yourself sometimes, or realize, using emotional intelligence, realize that I am not in a relationship with myself.
Right.
I'm in a relationship with somebody else.
Right.
And in some cases, the way that they respond is, which is also communication, the way that they respond is according to how they understand the world to be and how they prefer the world to be. So interesting. Kind of got to be sensitive to the response you get back, but also realize what they do is about where they are at, and not necessarily about you. Okay. Two different people can respond in two different ways to the same information. True. So how a person responds is based on where they're at and how they see the world. And that's very, very important. It's something I share with my clients all the time. Don't take it personally, because it's not necessarily about you. Yes, you may be stimulating or triggering a response, but the way that they choose to respond is based on who they are and what they've been through. Makes sense. Before you go, I have one last question for you. Sure. Can you give us some tips on what we can do when there's breakdown in communication? All right, so for sure we want to find a way to express our needs or our problem, first of all. You can do this by sitting down and having a face-to-face conversation. Okay. You can write it down. Or alternatively, I think I'm the type that would write it down. Yeah. And if you write it down, it might on a paper. Yeah. It might be easier to discard it than to send it by text. Right. Because it's harder to get off of that person's device. True. So you might want to write it on paper. You could also seek to get mediation, either by someone who may know both of you, or by a neutral party, which could be likely a professional. Okay. Where you have a more objective and hopefully trained approach to deal with those kinds of situations. When there's a breakdown in communication, we definitely want to realize what begins the breakdown. Okay. Is it something that they did? Is it something that I'm doing? Is it a pattern that repeats itself. So we want to be aware of those things. Awareness is very important.
Okay.
And then we want to address it in a way that is, you want to kind of soften what we say so that we don't come across, sometimes I'm guilty of it, we don't come across as too sharp or too aggressive in terms of getting the message over.
Okay.
We want to realize that words do have implications and their feelings attached to them, and we want to do it in a way where the other person welcomes the communication and is likely to respond in a way that is progressive and productive. Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you for those tips.
You're welcome.
It was such a pleasure having you join us. Thank you so much, Krisnan, for all your insight. You can follow him on Facebook, on Instagram, and you can contact him directly if you wanted to get more information on communication. So we look forward to welcoming you back when we have some more insightful topics, some juicy topics. The show is called For Real, so we intend to keep it real on this show. So thank you so much once again for joining us, and see you soon on For Real.